The sick recovered. The broken stood again. The hopeless found new life. Yet almost no one stops to ask a remarkable question. What happened in the moments before those healings? The Gospels preserve the miracles, but behind them stood a language spoken every day by Jesus, a language where a single word could carry layers of meaning impossible to capture in modern translations. Hidden within that language is a forgotten key to understanding healing itself. It is not merely a word about curing disease. It is a word about restoring what had been broken long before the body revealed its pain. Tonight, we will rediscover that ancient Aramaic word, and by the end of this journey, you may understand the healing ministry of Jesus in a way you never have before. Healing has always fascinated humanity. Across every civilization, people have searched for remedies capable of restoring the body, calming the mind, and renewing the spirit. Yet when we open the Gospels, we encounter something profoundly different. Jesus did not merely remove symptoms. Again and again, he restored people in ways that reached far beyond physical recovery. The blind did more than receive sight. The paralyzed did more than walk. Those who had been rejected by society found dignity once again. Every healing seemed to restore an entire life rather than simply repair a single condition. This remarkable pattern raises an important question. What did healing truly mean to Jesus? Was it simply the disappearance of illness, or was something much deeper taking place beneath the visible miracle? The answer begins with the language he spoke every day. Jesus taught, prayed, and interacted with ordinary people in Aramaic. Unlike many modern languages, Aramaic words often carried several layers of meaning at once. Physical, emotional, spiritual, and relational realities were woven together into a single expression. Understanding those layers allows us to see familiar gospel passages with fresh eyes. One of the most beautiful examples appears throughout the healing narratives themselves. People came to Jesus carrying diseases, but many also carried fear, shame, isolation, grief, and hopelessness. His response addressed the whole person. This is why his miracles continue inspiring people after 2,000 years. They reveal that true restoration begins deeper than the body alone. Tonight, we begin exploring one ancient Aramaic word that points toward this forgotten understanding. It is not a magical formula, nor is it a secret incantation. Rather, it expresses a vision of healing rooted in wholeness of vision reflected throughout the ministry of Jesus. Before we discover the word itself, we must first understand why healing in the Gospels was never limited to the body. It always began with the restoration of the person. The Gospel of Mark, chapter those, tells the story of a man lowered through the roof by 4 faithful friends. The crowd expected Jesus to address the man's physical condition immediately. Instead, his first words reached somewhere far deeper. Before speaking to the body, he spoke to the heart. Before commanding strength to return to weakened limbs, he restored hope where despair had taken root. The miracle unfolded from the inside outward. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout the ministry of Jesus. Healing was never presented as a mechanical act. It was the visible expression of an invisible restoration already beginning within the person standing before him. The ancient Aramaic tradition preserves this understanding through one remarkable word, although commonly translated as healing. Asuta carries a richer meaning. It points toward restoration, completeness, and the return of a person to the condition for which God originally created them. In Tis, sensei healing is not merely the absence of disease, it is the recovery of wholeness. The body, the heart, the mind, and the spirit begin moving together once again, instead of remaining divided by fear, suffering, or hopelessness. This perspective helps explain why the encounters with Jesus transformed people so profoundly. Those who came seeking relief often discovered something far greater. They encountered a restoration that reached beyond their immediate need and touched the deepest foundations of their lives. Illness was addressed, but identity was restored as well. Weakness gave way to dignity. Isolation gave way to belonging. Despair gave way to hope. This is the horizon toward which Asuta Kwaili Punsa. Restoration far more complete than many readers have ever imagined. If you've made it this far, it was not by accident. Few are truly ready to go deeper, and that's perfectly fine. But if something in you is saying yes, the study guides are pinned comment, and the best is yet to come. In the next chapters, you'll discover what could change everything for you. Now that we have uncovered the deeper meaning of us, another question naturally arises. If Jesus understood healing as the restoration of wholeness, where did that restoration actually begin? The answer may be one of the most overlooked aspects of his ministry. Again and again, before a visible miracle took place, something invisible had already begun changing within the person standing before him. The body was never the starting point. It became the final expression of a transformation that had already taken root in the heart. Consider the woman who had suffered from bleeding for 12 years. Recorded in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5. She had exhausted every available remedy and had spent everything she possessed seeking relief. Yet when she encountered Jesus, his first response was not a discussion about her illness. He recognized something much deeper. He said, "Daughter, your faith has made you whole." Those words reveal an extraordinary perspective. The miracle was not described merely as the removal of disease. It was described as the restoration of the person herself. This is precisely where a sutta begins to unfold in its fullest beauty. It reminds us that healing is not simply about removing pain. It is about restoring harmony wherever life has become fragmented. Fear divides us from peace. Shame divides us from dignity. Hopelessness divides us from trust. Over time, those invisible fractures shape the way we see ourselves, our future, and even our relationship with God. Jesus consistently moved beyond the visible wound to restore what suffering had quietly broken within. This understanding remains profoundly relevant today. Many people carry emotional burdens long after physical wounds have healed. Others experience physical exhaustion, while the deeper source lies in years of anxiety, grief, bitterness, or isolation. ASSUTA invites us to see ourselves through a different lens. It asks us to consider that God's desire is not merely to repair isolated parts of our lives but to restore the whole person into harmony with His presence. Perhaps this explains why so many people left the presence of Jesus transformed in ways that could never be fully measured. Their bodies recovered, but something even greater had happened. Their identity had been renewed. Their hope had returned. Their lives had been gathered back together. That is the quiet miracle hidden within the ancient Aramaic understanding of us. The more closely we observe the healing ministry of Jesus, the more clearly one remarkable pattern begins to emerge. He never treated people as collections of symptoms. Every person who approached him carried a unique story, a hidden burden, and a longing that reached far beyond physical relief. His words, his compassion, and his presence consistently restored what suffering had slowly taken away. The visible miracle became the outward sign of a much deeper work already unfolding within the soul. This helps explain why the Gospels so often connect healing with faith, forgiveness, peace, and renewed purpose. These were never separate realities, competing with one another. They were different expressions of the same movement toward wholeness. ASSUTA captures this beautifully. It speaks of a life being brought back into alignment with the design God intended from the very beginning. Healing, therefore, is not simply about surviving illness. It is about recovering the fullness of life that fear, pain, and brokenness have gradually obscured. Imagine how differently we might approach our own struggles if we viewed them through this perspective. Rather than asking only, "How can this pain disappear?" we might begin asking, "What part of my life is God gently inviting back into wholeness?" That question does not deny the reality of suffering. Instead, it opens the possibility that every difficulty can become an invitation to deeper restoration. The ministry of Jesus repeatedly demonstrates that no wound is beyond the reach of divine compassion, and no life is too fractured to begin again. The ancient Aramaic understanding preserved in a sutta reminds us that healing is ultimately an act of reunion. The scattered pieces of life begin finding their place once more. Fear gradually gives way to trust. Isolation gives way to belonging. Despair gives way to hope. And through that quiet process, the person discovers that God's restoring work has been reaching toward them all along. Perhaps this is why the healing stories of Jesus continue touching hearts after 2,000 years. They are not simply accounts of extraordinary moments in history. They are living invitations. They remind every generation that true healing begins where the soul rediscovers the wholeness for which it was created. In that rediscovery, a sutta becomes more than an ancient word. It becomes a living promise of restoration. Thank you for getting this far. If the awakening of consciousness is hitting you hard, it's a sign that you're ready to go deeper. The study guides are waiting for you in the pinned comments. There is a reason the healing ministry of Jesus continues to inspire people across every culture and generation. His miracles were never invitations to admire his power from a distance. They were invitations to rediscover what God desires to restore within every human life. The ancient Aramaic understanding of Asuta reminds us that healing begins the moment we stop seeing ourselves only through the lens of pain and begin remembering the wholeness for which we were created. This is not about denying suffering. It is about allowing divine truth to become greater than the brokenness we have carried for so long. Now, gently place one hand over your heart. As you breathe in, remember that your life has always possessed value beyond what fear, illness, or disappointment may have whispered. As you breathe out, quietly release the burden of believing that your brokenness defines your identity. You are more than your diagnosis, more than your past, more than your greatest struggle. Now, softly speak the ancient Aramaic word, Asuta. Pause for a moment. Speak it again. Asuta. Remain in silence for several breaths. Let this become more than a spoken word. Let it become an act of trust. Every time you remember Asuta, remember that true healing is not simply the disappearance of pain. It is the quiet return of the whole person into harmony with the God who has never stopped calling them back to life. As we come to the end of this journey, perhaps the greatest discovery is not the ancient word itself, but the heart of the one who spoke through it. The healing ministry of Jesus was never limited to extraordinary moments recorded in Scripture. It revealed the character of God, who sees beyond symptoms, beyond appearances, and beyond everything that has been broken by fear, suffering, or time. Every encounter was an invitation to return to wholeness. Every miracle pointed toward restoration. Every act of compassion reminded people that they had never been forgotten. The ancient Aramaic word, Asuta, continues, carrying that same invitation today. It reminds us that healing is not merely something we seek when life becomes difficult. It is the continual work of God, restoring every part of our lives into harmony with His love. Sometimes that restoration appears suddenly. At other times it unfolds quietly, one step at a time. Yet every movement toward truth, peace, forgiveness, hope, and renewed faith becomes part of the healing journey that Jesus revealed. Carry this word with you beyond today's video. The next time fear begins speaking louder than faith, remember Asuta. The next time discouragement tells you that nothing can change, remember Asuta. The next time you pray for someone you love, let this ancient word remind you that God's deepest desire has always been restoration. Whether the healing you seek is physical, emotional, or spiritual, never forget that the ministry of Jesus consistently moved toward the whole person, not merely the visible wound. Perhaps that is why these ancient teachings continue touching hearts after 2,000 years. They remind us that the God revealed through Jesus is still calling people into wholeness. The invitation has never changed. Only our willingness to receive it. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation. I am glad you are here, and I mean that deeply. The fact that you are seeking this knowledge tells me everything about where you are in your journey. Study guides with deeper teachings are waiting for you in the pinned comment below, with gratitude for walking this path together. Before you leave, if this message touched your heart or brought new understanding into your life, write the word restoration in the comments below. Your testimony may encourage someone else who is seeking healing and renewal. Thank you for sharing this moment of ancient wisdom with us. Until the next revelation, walk in peace, walk in freedom, and walk in the power of Ifatha. Be open.